Okay, so we are on page 176. We just recorded that video about inner divinity from page 174. And we just read a paragraph that is useful to know, but I want to add some detail to it. So after I read this, I'm going to say, but I'm wondering, can we be a little bit more specific about what that means? And then I'm going to say, yes, we can, and then I'm going to show you how. Or maybe now that I've spoiled the surprise, I won't do it that way. Throughout the 2000s, research into what psychologists call identity maintenance found that reputation management is the glue that binds us to our peer groups. When we feel as though accepting certain facts could damage our reputation, could get us ostracized or excommunicated, we become highly resistant to updating our priors. What does that mean, we become highly resistant to updating our priors? So back in 2024, generations before now, people would have, it's so weird I can't hear myself, people would have said, oh, well, basically what happens is someone is a part of a group, and then they see that this fact that's proposed to them will risk their group membership. And so because they want to stay as members of the group, they find a way to ignore this fact and sort of stick their heads in the sand, cover their ears, and basically lie to themselves in order to maintain the beliefs that keep them in the group. And maybe they don't even really believe it anymore. The thing that maybe they were pretty convinced by those excommunicating facts. But then, they just keep up the illusion. They even lie to themselves, and they tell themselves, no, we still believe what our group believes. And then, and then there's a lot of inner turmoil, and oh my gosh. What a joke. Of course, that what it actually is, there isn't a judge. There isn't a judge who, looked at all those things and knew all those things that were happening in here. There's no judge in here. This is all what's happening in you. Okay? You, the judge, do not exist in here. You just catch some of the interactions in there sometimes. So what does that mean, that we become highly resistant to updating our priors? When we feel as though accepting certain facts could damage our reputation, could get us ostracized or excommunicated, we become highly resistant to updating our priors. All right, well, look, long story short, remember, every one of these dudes in this connectome, in this mind, in this brain, every one of these dudes, these voices, can be presented as an if-then rule, which is why we also call them its. So there's an it there, there's an it there. If then, if then, if then. Okay. So, fact is processed by the language center. There is one of these guys, his rule is, if I hear information, then send it for evaluation. But there's another guy, this guy right here. If I, so maybe he sends it here. Or no, he calls up this guy. So this guy does a little evaluating. And this guy right here, his thing is, if the evaluation identifies an inconsistency with our current system, or a difference with our current system, our current belief, or the belief of our group, the belief that gets us group membership, then shut this guy the fuck up. And that guy too. And then it might not even, I don't know what the exact network is, but at some level in the processing, there's a guy whose whole job it is, and every human has this guy, this voice, whose whole job it is if there is a conflict between what we are hearing and what our group thinks, or what we think, in which case it's called confirmation bias. If there's a conflict, I am shutting that shit down. And just like how, in a government or, in a TV show or whatever, you can have some corruption, and then the police can't, let's say there are some good cops and they can't bust it goes all the way to the top. They can't bust the corrupt people and so on. Forget how it ends, because it always ends with them winning and there being, the whole government being fixed and everybody being happy, because of course they have to keep us happy. But the imagine one of these plots where it doesn't actually get resolved. Well, that's what the mind is. There's not necessarily a happy ending. So there might be like a couple dudes in there that are like, hey, that fact was interesting. Those dudes, their rule is, if I hear a new fact, then prioritize it. But he gets shut down by the guy that says, if I hear a fact that contradicts something, or maybe what we can say is, this guy, I don't know what guy, whatever guy, he says his rule is, because you can break it down further. If his rule is, if I hear a fact that contradicts some other fact, then report it to, these two departments. And one of those departments is the group membership department, which of course every human evolved with. Life sucks now when you're alone. Before, you died. Okay, if you didn't have a tribe, you died. Okay, so that's why social proof and reputation management are such important. They've got whole departments, a lot of funding, and all of that. So it's getting shut down by someone, by one of the elements in here. And that's not because you as a whole person are closed-minded necessarily. That is in all of us for that to shut down. Of course, I don't even catch it often, but I know that my confirmation bias department probably is working as hard as other people's. So when I do some of my reading, I'm seeing things that are not saying the same thing as what I'm thinking, but there's a word in common. And that's enough for my confirmation bias department to go, because one of them is, if there's a similarity between a respected text and something that you are saying, then that means that text and you agree with each other. But he doesn't really know what he's talking about, this voice. He can't really compare them. All it has to be is a word in common, really. Which is not going to be surprising, since it's going to be in the same field, because of course I'm choosing books that use some of the words that I use, because I got them from the books, and it's in the field, and blah, blah, blah. Then the second thing that means is that if there's something in here, and let's say I'm trusting this author, and he says something that sort of refutes something that I may claim on this channel, and even that I continue to claim as I'm reading it, might not even notice it. Wouldn't even notice it. So, unless hopefully I have some other voices that are like, really good at getting that passed up the chain of, So how do you? Okay, so the next sentence is, but the threat to our reputation can be lessened either by affirming a separate group identity or reminding ourselves of our deepest values. Okay, so if we ever want to change our output, we have to change our input. Right? Because we know that we're input-output machines. We know we're not just like producing. Oh, fuck. What do you want? Come down. So, by affirming a separate group identity, by exposing ourselves to another group, by receiving the kindness, the welcome of another group, that input is going to change sort of our allegiances, our sense of belonging, or maybe it's going to fill that sense of belonging that was previously filled by our other conspiracy group, which now that we have, so that dude who goes, If there's a belief that threatens group membership, then shut that shit down. Well, that dude's no longer reacting because the group membership had changed. Oh, sorry. Well, you don't really know that. Look, if you believe a thing, you're part of a group, you believe a thing. I mean, maybe you figured it out from what I read, right? You believe a thing, and it's different from the group that you're in, that's going to be a problem. But the guy he's talking about here had made some other friends. And then it was shortly after that that he started being reactive to some facts about 9/11. He was now able to consider them, or the brain was able to, process that memo because it didn't keep getting shredded by the group membership guy. Because he was like, oh, no, our new friend group wouldn't mind if we accepted those facts, so I don't have anything to say. Or we can remind ourselves of our deepest values. So I have a thing called refute to mute. Refute to mute is when if you have a behavior or belief, part of you does, but another part of you doesn't agree that should be. Then what you have to do is, in order to revoice that department or that network or whatever, you gotta make real strong the interaction between the two departments. So by saying the arguments of the good department, saying them out loud, really just being like, here's what they are, here are the reasons, then that's going to be played over the announcement system, and hopefully they will hear it, the guys who are delivering the behaviors that you don't want. And so by reminding ourselves of our deepest values, by saying out loud, so he was talking about for this guy that truth was really important to him. He was going to festivals called Truth Festival and stuff with a bunch of New Age bullshit. But still, so of course that word's getting used a bunch. But if you're just say, because if part of your brain agrees that information, evidence, empiricism, and collaboration and competition of ideas, all that stuff is important, and you keep saying it, you keep reminding yourself of these deepest values, and you are now sending that back in as an input. The brain is sending it as an input to itself by thinking that, by saying it out loud, by writing it down, and by changing that input, you change the outputs. You're going to end up, shutting down that, or at least, for the day, that department that was resisting the changing of priors. What I do really like about his phrasing is that he says we become highly resistant to updating our priors. He doesn't say that we choose to resist, but he says we become highly resistant. The system changes so that it just becomes highly resistant because elements in the system are just doing the roles that they're programmed to do. And one of the voices that we're all pre-programmed with is this one about protecting group membership. The last thing to note, there's no censor for this. Okay? So when you hear a fact, and when these guys are when this guy sounded like an alarm, saying, yo, this fact conflicts with our group membership, so shut that down. He didn't send out a memo to the entire brain saying he was doing that. And you only experience some of the activity in the brain. Most of the time, you're not going to experience that. Pretty much all the time. So you're never going to... Why would there ever be a reason for that guy to announce to the whole brain, here's what's happening? Then somebody else in the brain would just go question it. Go, wait a minute, hold on. We're only doing this for group membership? But actually, our values... It would be too easy. He wouldn't have any power. Now, we can hire people to do that in our minds, but naturally, the way that sort of our natural system, that dude's going over there, shutting shit down, shredding shit, killing other voices, bro, or giving them, shooting them with tranks, And then he's going back into his office. And then even if you were to think about it, even if you were to consciously think about it, am I believing this just because if I, or am I rejecting this fact just because if I accepted it would threaten group membership? So maybe you send, so a voice goes in to check in the office of that resistor guy. He's just sitting there, bro. He did everything in the dead of night. You're, okay. Hey, are you, No, I've been here. Anyway, it's really cool that we have all those friends, huh? But he's not winking or anything. And then, and then maybe the voice that went to check on him was like, did you? Nope. No, why don't you go talk to Confabulation? I'm sure if you have any doubts, he's going to have some real good justifications for why those facts were bad and blah, blah. Nothing to do with me. Okay? That's pretty cool. Good explanation, right?